Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. In yesterday's briefing, we put a lot of important material in the Zoom chat. So for those of you following on YouTube, we love having you. If you look in the description, you can get the direct links to these Zoom calls so you can also join live and see what goes into the chat. And on that note, as I mentioned yesterday, tomorrow's briefing is not going to be recorded. It's not going on YouTube. So if you enjoy these briefings, you don't want to miss out on what we're going to share. Make sure to tune in live tomorrow. For security reasons, we are not able to post tomorrow's briefing on social media. So this is your warning now. I'll try to remind everyone at the end of the briefing, make sure to check out tomorrow live. It's, of course, a great pleasure and honor to be joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF. General, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Moshe.
General, there's a lot to discuss. There is a lot happening in Israel and Judea and Samaria in the leadership of the IDF. So just jump in, share with us what you can.
I must say that this week we had a meeting with the Minister of Defense. It was a 3 hours meeting. We discussed many issues, but among other things, we discussed the issue of the leadership of the IDF and the need for new leadership. The army is yearning for a new culture, and we had an in-depth discussion. And a day later, the Chief of Staff announced that he's resigning from office until March. As of Sunday, as of this coming Sunday, the Minister of Defense is going to start interviewing the candidates. There are 3 candidates to replace the current Chief of Staff, Amir Avivi. One of them is the former Ground Forces Commander, Amir Avivi. Amir Avivi commanded the Golani Brigade. He's a fierce warrior, very serious guy. In the last position, he was commander of the ground forces, which basically in charge of building the ground forces. The other candidate is the current deputy of Amir Avivi, Amir Baram. He comes from the paratroopers. He commanded the Northern Command. But of course, he was deputy of the Chief of Staff on the 7th of October. So maybe doesn't have a complete direct responsibility, but is part of the group that was in charge of everything that was going on, including the ideas and so on. And last but not least, the CEO of the Ministry of Defense, Eyal Zamir. Eyal is an armored officer. He commanded the 7th Brigade of the Armored Forces, the tanks. A very serious guy. He was commander of the Southern Command. He was the last commander of the Southern Command that built a plan to conquer Gaza completely. Took it very seriously. And when he was deputy of the army, when he finished his position 2.5 years ago, he said the army is going in the wrong way. We should invest in the ground forces. We don't have enough munitions. Was very unhappy about the overall policy led by the Chief of Staff, the former one and this one. And he has done a very good job now in the Ministry of Defense, making sure that we have the munitions and everything we need to win the war. So we have 3 candidates. Each one of them can be relevant, but I think that if I had to say who is the most experienced and relevant and had the right mindset. I would say Eyal. And we'll see. We'll see what will be decided. We were asked about what we think about the candidates. I gave the Prime Minister my views on it, and we'll wait and see. So this is what's going on. And as the Chief of Staff announced that he is resigning, also the commander of the Southern Command, Finkelman, resigned as well. And I think that we'll see soon more and more generals and commanders that have been involved on the 7th of October resigning from their position, and we'll see new commanders being appointed. And this is all happening while we're having this ceasefire in Gaza, and we are releasing hostages. It gives the army some time to organize and be ready for the next step when we'll go back to a full-scale war in Gaza.
General, let me ask you, in terms of the timing of this transition, how disruptive is it to this war? Meaning, is this the right time for this to be happening?
Yeah, I mean, many people would say it should have happened earlier. Maybe the Chief of Staff should have resigned before, but I think it's also a good time and an opportunity to get the army ready for the next steps. The army is working all the time. The fact that the Chief of Staff is changing, it doesn't affect the operations on the ground. The Chief of Staff is responsible until the last days in office, and then a new Chief of Staff will come. But I think that the important thing talking about a new Chief of Staff is really building the right team. We want to see officers who are real warriors, who don't deal with politics, but deal with fighting and wars. And not politician officers, but combat officers with the right mindset, IDSF mindset, I would say. And this is what we accept for the next Chief of Staff. And I think that the next Chief of Staff will want to prove himself, show that he's a fighter, show that he can win the war. So I guess we'll see an army that is very proactive and really wants to win the war on all fronts.
Now, General, our viewers who, the ones who tune in on a very regular basis know that IDSF, we have a lot of education programs focused on the next generation. We're building out our own pre-army program to take this IDSF mentality and instill it in the next generation to provide powerful leadership. I'm wondering if you can answer, and you can pass on this question if you want, how much distance there still is to go? Meaning, once there is a new Chief of Staff, how close are we to reaching a level where on the upper echelons of the IDF leadership, we are at a place where you are happy, where you see leaders who are making the types of decisions you'd want to see? Is that imminent with the new change in leadership, or are we still 20 years out?
I think that, Moshe, my experience commanding units is that a new commander has huge impact on its unit. You really can transform a unit end to end. And the same goes with the Chief of Staff. The Chief of Staff can bring with him a spirit and a mindset that can shape completely the whole army. And this is exactly what we need. I saw it after the second Lebanese war. There was a huge problem. The war didn't go well. After a year, the Chief of Staff resigned, just as it's happening now. And then the decision was, we're not taking a Chief of Staff from the army, we're bringing somebody from outside, and then brought Gabi Ashkenazi. Gabi Ashkenazi was deputy of the Chief of Staff. He didn't get the position of Chief of Staff. He was sent to do exactly what Eyal Zamir is doing now, CEO of the Ministry of Defense. And they pulled him out of the Ministry of Defense, brought him back to the army, and he did a great job. Was a very good Chief of Staff and rebuilt the army. So this is what we need now, but he needs to also build the future. We need our best fighting officers, guys with the right mindsets and values to be appointed to the different positions. This is the key.
Thank you. Okay, there's a major operation that is now unfolding in Jenin. Can you kind of tell us what is happening, why that's happening now?
Yeah, so we know that Iran is doing a huge effort to smuggle weapons through Jordan into the areas of Judea and Samaria, weaponizing terror organizations. We have seen throughout the year attempts of terror attacks, which sometimes succeeded in Judea and Samaria. And it's obvious that we needed at a certain point to start really attacking fiercely these terror hubs in the Palestinian Arab cities. And we're taking advantage from the fact that at the moment there is a ceasefire in Gaza to shift the center of gravity from Gaza to Judea and Samaria and deal with this terror infrastructure. So the fact that we're having this ceasefire in Gaza, it doesn't mean the war's ended and we stopped fighting. We are fighting, but we are shifting all the time the centers of gravity. We started with Gaza, we moved to Lebanon, we made Syria fall, and now there is a fierce attack on Jenin, and it's just the beginning. This operation is different from everything we saw in the last year in this area. It's much bigger, it's much stronger, it will go for a long time, and it will expand to other areas, and we'll start dismantling this terror infrastructure also in the Samaria area, and hopefully also in other areas in Judea and Samaria.
And is there a concern that this would destabilize Jordan or destabilize the PA in such a way that it causes more harm to Israel? Or this is just Israel's doing what it needs to do, and it can only get better from here once these terrorist cells are removed?
So actually, the Palestinian Authority tried to launch an operation in Jenin. They had many casualties and it failed completely. And they had to sign some embarrassing agreement with the terror organizations that they have to retreat from Jenin. So they're not really relevant. They never were talking about really being able to deal with the terror infrastructure. And we shouldn't count on them. In the former government, there was a decision to not operate in Jenin, let the Palestinian Authority deal with this, and it was devastating. We had many, many terror attacks emanating from there. So we have to be responsible for our own security, and this is exactly what's happening. Attack on Jenin, more than 10 terrorists killed so far, and this is ongoing, and we'll see how it develops in the coming days.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers who are sending in questions, allowing us to really address what is relevant to all of you. General, you've definitely over the past year or so of briefings have kind of given your perspective on the security value of Jewish towns in Judea and Samaria. They're not a liability, they're an asset. Can you just explain a little bit more about the long-term strategy with a place like Jenin? Meaning short of Israelis moving into Jenin, how is Israel going to clean it up and then maintain a control in those Area A places? General, did I lose you?
Moshe, you hear me?
You're back. You're back. Did
Okay,
you hear the
good.
question?
Yeah, I did. So I would say that there is a deep connection between Jewish towns, their location, and security. And this is not just about Judea and Samaria or areas like that. It's everywhere. It's the Negev, it's the Galil, in Operation Guardians of the Wall, a main road in the Negev was closed for 3 days between Beersheba and Dimona. And the reason why there was a capability of the Bedouins in the Negev to close the road, because there is no Jewish town along the road. You don't control the road. The same goes in the Galil. You have one of the main roads in the Galil to the city of Afula, has no Jewish towns along the road, and it's very hard to keep this road open when there is tension, when you have riots. So if you want to be sovereign in the land of Israel, you need massive, massive presence of towns and cities all over in order to really be relevant and secure the whole regions. And also this brings prosperity and economy and really an ability to live much safer in all the areas.
So you use that term sovereign. So are you able to weigh in on declaring formal sovereignty in Israeli law across Judea and Samaria, how that would contribute to national security if it's a good idea?
It's crucial that in areas, especially Area C, which is under Israeli responsibility, there will be an application of the Israeli law. To settle the Jordan Valley, we need to settle all Area C. It's 60% of Judea and Samaria. It's crucial for Israel's future. It's crucial for our kids and grandkids and their ability to have land where to live and to really sit strongly on the mountains and safeguard Israel. The only natural border Israel has is the Jordan Valley. Israel, from the sea, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan Valley, the whole land of Israel is 45 miles. That's it. And most of them are the mountains of Judea and Samaria. So basically, Israel is Judea and Samaria with a bit of margin, with a bit of coast and a bit of Jordan Valley. If you are not strongly sitting on the mountains, you won't exist. Israel won't be viable as a state. And this is why, especially now when President Trump has been elected, there is an historical opportunity to really push forward sovereignty in vast areas in the Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria. This will safeguard Israel for generations to come.
Thank you. I was actually just going to ask you about the timing of such a declaration. Okay, but let me just ask one point further on that. In terms of declaring sovereignty, how does it impact the fight against Iran? Is there a direct correlation that if Israel were to formally declare that sovereignty, it would weaken the Iranian axis and their access to Judea and Samaria?
So I think that the strategy should be reversed. We need to first bring down the Shia axis. We need an attack on the nuclear sites, on the military capabilities of Iran, and we should expect the US to lead such an attack. We need to deal together with Iran and bring down the Shia axis. We need a coalition. We need regional peace. We need normalization with Saudi Arabia. And I think that if we reach these two big goals, then we can come and talk about what is the best solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it's certainly not a solution that includes retreats and concessions. It's a solution that includes sovereignty. But today, the Palestinians, on one hand, they are empowered by Iran and weaponized and budgeted by Iran. On the other hand, they're saying, if you don't give us what we want, there will be no regional peace. And we're saying, no, we'll do it the other way. We make sure we deal with the enemies that are weaponizing them and budgeting them with the Iranian regime and its proxies. We'll do these regional global peace agreements. And then we can talk about sovereignty and focus on that, but from a stance that they don't have the power to stop the regional peace, that they don't condition anything on this regional peace. Now, to apply sovereignty, we can do it without an agreement with the Palestinians. We need US agreement, not Palestinian agreement. But we do need to bring a clear vision. What is our solution in the long term? What is the kind of self-governance we want for the Palestinians? Because we don't want to annex the Palestinians themselves. We don't want 2 million more Arabs with Israeli citizenship. We want self-governance, but not a state, not an army of terror, not the ideas that were pushed through Oslo and that were devastating to Israel. So there are many solutions to this self-governance issue, and we need to say clearly what we want and what are the areas we want to apply sovereignty in. And these areas are not areas that include Palestinian Arab cities. We're talking about Area C, which is like 60% of Judea and Samaria. But the overall sovereignty over the land of Israel, the airspace, the borders, the overriding security responsibility needs to be Israeli. Israel needs to be the only real sovereign entity in the land of Israel.
Thank you, General. Here in Israel, the idea of a two-state solution seems to be dead. But when I speak to people in the US, it seems to be very much part of the discussion of Israel. I'm wondering if you can just clarify, because when you were talking about the status, of Judea and Samaria, you said that the people there should have self-governance, but not a state. Can you just clarify that a little bit more? What is the shortcoming of a state that is solved by just giving them self-governance?
So let's talk what Israel needs to exist. In order to exist, we need to control the borders of the land of Israel. It needs to be an Israeli area. We need to control the airspace and the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. We need full responsibility talking about security, overriding security all over the land of Israel. Without these things, Israel is not viable as the one and only Jewish. This means that any governance you want for the Palestinians must be under these conditions. Can it be some kind of Vatican, San Marino, Emirates? There are many, many different options that enable the Palestinians to have their own civil self-governance, but without an army going in and out the land of Israel through Israel, and not, let's say, bringing 2 million jihadists in an uncontrolled way into the land of Israel. You cannot have people going into the land of Israel without Israeli concession, making sure that these are not terrorists and people who come to harm us. So therefore, no matter what you call it, an emirate, cantonized area, a state, but completely demilitarized and without airspace and overriding Israeli security, and autonomy. There are many different solutions. The important thing is not the name, is really making sure that everything that we need to exist is incorporated in such ideas. And we are pushing ideas in IDSF that adhere to the needs of Israel to exist and prosper.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's an important conversation. We need to have more briefings on. I can see by the comments in the chat because the concept of statehood in the West is very different than the Middle East. In the West, we assume it's a right and it's good. Whereas in the Middle East, statehood is very fragile, and it has different connotations and implications. So thank you for clarifying that. And a reminder to all of our viewers, tomorrow we have a great briefing. They're all great. This is a great briefing. Tomorrow we have a great briefing. It will not be recorded. If you want to hear tomorrow's briefing, please make sure to log in live. For all of you asking questions on Gaza and the ceasefire and wondering why we're not talking about it today, we're talking about it tomorrow. So make sure to tune back in. Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And thank you for all of your leadership. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.